I know, I know. When Freya was done, Ellena made tea and they sat at the kitchen table. Freya told her everything. When she finished, Ellena was quiet a moment, and then she said, "Your parents have made their choice, and you have made yours. And your choice is the right one. You are staying here. This is your home for as long as you need it. We will figure out the rest together." She said, "You are not the first woman in this family to do hard things, and you will not be the last." Freya moved into the small back bedroom that night. She was 17 when Sigd was born. She has said since that the moment he came into the world felt like arrival, like she stopped running from something and started running toward it. She looked at him and understood completely that whatever it took was what she was going to do. What it took was 15 years behind the counter at Rosie's diner. She worked doubles when she could get them. She worked the early shift, 5:30 wake-ups in the dark, the breakfast rush before the town was awake, because the morning tips were better. She worked through the ache in her feet that became, after a few years, simply a baseline condition of her body. She cut coupons. She bought Sigd's clothes at the thrift store. She kept a coffee can under her bed, and every bill she didn't immediately need went into the can. And every rolled-up coin from every shift went into the can. And that can was the only retirement plan and college fund and emergency savings she had. And she treated it with the serious attention it deserved. She heard nothing from her parents, not when Sigd was born, not at Christmas, not when Grandma Ellena had her hip replaced. Not once, not a card, not a phone call, 25 years of silence. Sigd grew up in the small brick house, and he was curious about everything from the beginning. The kind of curious that latches onto a subject and excavates it. Astronomy, then biology, then chemistry, then the human body. By the time he was 12, he had decided medicine was the thing, and he approached that decision with the focused certainty with which he approached everything. When he was 14, he sat at the kitchen table and said, "I want to be a surgeon. That's what I'm supposed to do." Freya put down what she was doing and looked at him and said, "Then that's what you'll do." He said, "It's expensive." She said, "I know. We're working on it." She did not tell him about the coffee can or about the bank account she had opened years later labeled, in the notes field, Sigd's future. She did not tell him she had done the arithmetic every year, every raise, every slow Tuesday when the tips were thin, calculating whether what she was saving would be enough. She just said, "We're working on it." He believed her. He always had. It was a Thursday in March, 6 years into her time at the diner, when a man in an expensive coat came in for coffee and spilled it on himself, and on the counter, and on Freya, who reacted with the complete equanimity of someone who has been splashed, dropped on, and subjected to the full range of diner chaos for years, and has emerged from all of it unruffled. She handed him napkins. He apologized. He was tall, in his 40s, with the easy physicality of someone comfortable in his own body, and the genuine eyes of someone who listens when you speak. She looked at his ruined coat, and then at the rack by the door, and handed him a corduroy jacket from 1974, in the particular shade of brown the 70s had been very certain about. He looked at it. He said, "What is this?" She said, "Your coat has coffee on it. This one doesn't." He wore it for the rest of his visit, and he knew he looked ridiculous, and he wore it anyway, and at one point looked down at himself and smiled. And that was the moment she decided she was willing to see who this person was. His name was Lance. He was a real estate developer, successful in the unhurried way of someone who has been at it long enough that the success has settled into a fact rather than a pursuit. He came back the following Thursday, and the Thursday after that, and it was clear within 2 visits that the regularity was deliberate. He listened when she spoke. He asked questions that were actually interested. He did not treat the diner counter as a transaction, or look at her with the particular condescension of someone who believed she was there because she had failed to be elsewhere. She told him about Sigd in the 3rd week. His current obsession was the circulatory system, and he had developed a habit of explaining the function of the human heart at dinner in a way that was genuinely impressive and also meant dinner sometimes ran long. Lance laughed, a real laugh, not a performed one. He said, "How old is he?" She said, 9. He said, "And he already has opinions about the circulatory system?" She said, "Yes, strong ones." He came back the following Saturday with a proper illustrated medical text, the kind designed for serious readers, not children. He put it on the counter and said, "I thought your son might like this." She said, "You don't have to do that." He said, "I know I don't have to. That's why I did it." Sigd consumed the book in 2 weeks, annotated it, left it on the kitchen table with post-it notes, marking every page he wanted to revisit. When he met Lance for the first time, he brought the book and they spent 45 minutes at the table while Freya cooked and Lance asked questions and Sigd explained, with the patient thoroughness of someone who has organized his knowledge and wants to share it accurately, everything he had learned. Lance said afterward, quietly, while they did the dishes, "You know he's going to be something extraordinary." Freya said, "I know." She said it the way you say something you have known for a long time and have organized your entire life around. He proposed on a Tuesday night in November, the same month, though they didn't discuss it, that Owen had said she was holding him back 7 years before. He went down on one knee on the kitchen tile, ring in hand, Sigd doing homework at the table, Grandma Ellena in the other room, and he said, "I love you, and I love your son, and I love that you made me wear a corduroy jacket from 1974 on the day we met. I would very much like to be part of this family for the rest of my life." Freya said yes before he finished the sentence. Then he told her the other thing. He had been working on it for 8 months. He had connections, and he had used them carefully to get Sigd's application in front of the right people at Johns Hopkins Medical School. Not to buy a place, but to ensure the process saw what it was looking at. A 19-year-old from a small brick house who had taught himself medicine from library books and a gift text and had an academic record that was, by any measure, extraordinary. He took the letter from his pocket and put it on the table next to the ring. A full scholarship. Tuition, housing, stipend. Everything. Sigd looked up from his homework. Freya looked at the letter. She looked at Lance. She looked at the letter again, and then she cried, with the specific quality of someone who has been carrying something for a very long time and has just been given permission to set it down. Sigd started at Johns Hopkins that fall. He was, from the first semester, exactly what he had always been going to be. His professors noticed immediately. His clinical supervisors noticed. He had the instinct, the precision, and the particular clarity under pressure that some people have and most do not. By 22, he was chief of surgery at a major hospital in Baltimore. Not because the system moved fast, but because the people who worked with him understood that waiting for convention to catch up to reality was simply a waste of time. Freya was 42 when the call came. It was Thanksgiving week. Sigd was on call when the case came in. A 68-year-old woman, ruptured appendix, severe infection, the kind of case that requires immediate intervention and a surgeon who can hold precision under difficult conditions. The surgery lasted 6 hours. Everyone in that operating room knew they were watching something exceptional. Her husband had been in the waiting room the entire time. He was older, late 60s, in a good coat creased from hours of anxious sitting. When Sigd came out, the man stood so quickly he nearly lost his balance. Sigd told him, "She's stable. The surgery went well. She's going to be okay." And the man's face did the thing faces do when someone has been holding everything together for hours and is finally given permission to stop. He held Sigd's hand for a moment longer than a handshake usually lasts and said, "I want to meet your mother. I want to thank the woman who raised someone like you." Sigd didn't know these people. He saw a man whose relief was genuine and whose gratitude was genuine, and he said, "I'll talk to her. I'll see what I can arrange." He called Freya that evening. She said, "Of course. Tell them they're welcome to come by." She didn't ask their names. The day they came was the day before Thanksgiving. The house was warm. Candles, the smell of cooking, the particular quality of light that comes from a home made with care over many years. Grandma Ellena was there, as she always was when the family gathered, in her chair by the window with her tea, in her late 80s now, but with the same directness in her eyes that had always been there, missing nothing. The doorbell rang at 3 in the afternoon. Freya went to answer it. She opened the door and looked at the two people on her porch, and time did what it sometimes does in high-stakes moments. It slowed and became very specific. She saw the man first, the older man in the good coat Sigd had described, and then she saw the woman beside him, and she understood. Paul, Ellen, her parents. The father who had told her she was a disgrace. The mother who had sat in her chair with her hands folded and said nothing. The people who had put a 17-year-old into the January cold with a duffel bag and $43 and closed the door behind her. 25 years. She has said since that the strangest part was not the recognition. The strangest part was how calm she felt. Not the calm of someone suppressing what they feel, the genuine calm of someone who has lived long enough and done enough interior work to know, in a moment like this, exactly who they are. They hadn't recognized her yet. They were smiling the polite smiles of visitors. And then Paul's eyes adjusted, the way eyes adjust when they're trying to reconcile what they see with what they expect. And she watched the recognition arrive on his face. It was not a small thing to watch. It was the complete and total collapse of a constructed reality. Every assumption he had made about the evening, about the woman behind the door, dismantled in 2 seconds. What was left on his face was the specific horror that has no precedent and no place to go. Ellen's hand went to her mouth. Freya said, "Hello, Paul." "Ellen, please come in." She said it with a pleasantness that was not warmth. She stepped back from the door. She let them in. She was composed with the composure of someone who has had 25 years to decide how this moment would go. Paul started talking. Of course he did. He talked about mistakes, about regret, about how they had thought of her, about how they hoped she would understand. And underneath all of it, barely concealed, was what Freya could see clearly. The awareness of the house, of what it represented, of the son who was a chief surgeon, of the life that had turned out so far beyond what he had predicted for a girl with a duffel bag. Ellen was crying, genuine tears by the look of it. But the tears did not change what Freya knew about Ellen's silence at the table that Sunday night. Grandma Ellena had been listening from her chair. She set down her tea. She looked at Paul and Ellen with those eyes that had never dimmed, not in 90 years. She said, "Sit down." They sat. She said, "I want to tell you something, and I want you to listen to all of it." She said, "You put a 17-year-old girl out in the January cold with $43 in her pocket because you were worried about your church reputation. You did not call to ask if she was alive. You did not send anything when the baby was born. You did not call at Christmas. You did not call when I had my hip replaced and we needed help. You did not call when she got her first raise, or when Sigd got into Johns Hopkins, or when she bought the diner. You did not call for 25 years. She said, "You are here now because you saw this house, and you know who your grandson is, and you want to be let back in. And I want to be very clear that I can see that. I have known people like you my entire life, and I see exactly what you are doing." She said, "This woman is my granddaughter. I have been here every day since you threw her away. I was here when she came to my door at 10:30 at night in the cold. I was here when she had the baby alone at 17. I was here for every double shift and every saved penny, and every night she was too tired to cry, and cried anyway. You were not here. You had a choice every single day for 25 years, and every day you chose not to be here." She said, "You don't get to show up at the house now and weep and expect to be let in." The room was very quiet. Freya looked at her parents. She looked at them with the full clarity of 25 years, with everything she knew about what they had done and who they had failed to be. She thought about the cold and the duffel bag and the coffee can and the double shifts and the specific loneliness of doing it all without the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. She thought about Sigd at the kitchen table with his post-it notes. She thought about Lance on the kitchen tile with the ring and the letter. She said, "I want you to know that I am not angry. I was angry for a long time, but what I am now is clear." She said, "You lost the right to know me 25 years ago. You lost the right to know my son. You lost that right on the night you chose your reputation over your daughter. And I need you to understand this is not bitterness. It is simply true. Some doors, once you close them, do not open again." She said, "I hope you have a good Thanksgiving." She walked them to the door. She opened it. She stood aside. They went. Slowly, wordlessly, the way people leave a place when there is nothing left to say that would change anything. Paul looked back once, at the end of the walk. She was already closing the door. The soft, ordinary sound of a mechanism doing what it was built to do. Inside, Lance was in the kitchen. Sigd had arrived, straight from the hospital. Grandma Ellena was back in her chair with her tea, with the look of someone who has done what needed to be done, and is satisfied with the accuracy of it. The house was warm. The table was set for tomorrow. From the kitchen came the sound of something good being made. I want to say something before I leave you with this story. True family is not the people who share your blood. It is not the people who hold a title that the world says requires their love. True family is the people who showed up in the cold. The ones who opened the door at 10:30 at night when you had $43 and the January wind at your back. The ones who sat with you at the kitchen table and said, "Tell me what you need." Grandma Ellena was Freya's family. Lance was Freya's family. Sigd, always, was Freya's family. The family she built from the wreckage of what she had been handed, through 15 years of double shifts and coffee cans and aching feet and the absolute refusal to let the cold thing that happened to her determine the warm thing she was going to make of herself. Paul and Ellen had a daughter who built something extraordinary. They had a grandson who saves lives. They had all of it within reach for 25 years, and they chose their reputation over all of it. The people who only show up for the warmth did not make it warm. They are not entitled to the fire. And Freya, standing at the door of her home, closing it gently on the faces of the people who had once closed it on hers, was in that moment exactly what she had always been going to be: warm, whole, home.